Pokemon is one of my favorite series. It's hard to say which game is the best one. Each new entry offers something unique, partially because Game Freak loves to strip good features, but mostly because of the new locations and the Pokemon you meet. I always try to look for the good in each generation, and so for today I want to look at Generation 5, or Pokemon Black and Pokemon White. Released on March 4th, 2011 for the US, this is the first generation to be introduced on a system that already has a series of games. This is a game about bridges. Literally because there's a lot of bridges, but also a bridge of technology. A jump in what defines the series, a deeper dive into characters, and a leap into the modern Pokemon games we know today. Black and White is a game that tried to play off the expectations of longtime fans. The story, pacing, and scale was a radical shift from the games that came before it. But, as always, the game starts with a choice. Who you'll start your adventure with. Once you pick Snivy, your rivals choose their starters. You quickly get everything you need to start your journey and take your first steps on Route 1 together. Over the course of this journey, you'll see Cheren and Bianca grow and discover what types of people they want to be. Cheren starts out as a cocky, traditional type rival. He picks the Pokemon stronger than yours, and values strength and victory above all else. But after repeatedly losing battles to you, he catches the attention of the regional champion, Alder. For the second half of the game, they play off each other as they learn what it means to live with Pokemon. Yes, even Alder learns. And there's someone else that plays off these characters, but we'll get to him later. Bianca is a rival unlike one you've ever had before. She's not as good as you and Cheren, and picks the weaker Pokemon. She fails a lot, and she even has her Pokemon stolen. You could tell just by the small motion of her sprite how much it means to her that she lost. But this begins to change when she trains under several of the gym leaders, and gets the support she never got at home. Cheren and Bianca interact with these mentors across Unova, and near the end of the game, and perhaps a sequel, they take the reins. This has happened before in Pokemon, but this is the first time that you really see it in progress. And this is thanks to the gym leaders and champions being more fleshed out characters as well. Black and White added a lot of life and meaning to the people you meet along the way. And well, not just the people. Pokemon have had animation since Crystal, but only at the start of battle, and sometimes a game would just not include them for some reason. Well, now they finally get the treatment they deserve. Not only do you see the whole Pokemon in battle, but every sprite is uniquely animated. While I can agree they're not all winners, seeing Pokemon as something more than stationary pixels changes the whole feeling. You see their unique quirks in motion. You feel the scale of two giant monsters. And the moving camera makes turn-based combat feel a little more active. Battles are overall snappier, and for the first and last time, you have dynamic music in battles. Like when your Pokemon is at low HP. Or the gym leader is on their last Pokemon. And just a quick note here, while not unique or even new for Gen 5, this is the last time trainers talk during battle. Unova is a region set far from Kanto, Sinnoh, and all the other previous locations of the games. As such, the Pokédex of Black and White was the first to not have any returning Pokemon. At least until you beat the game. 156 new monsters hit the scene. This means every player's on the same page going in, and you can't fall into the trap of picking your favorites or playing it safe with a familiar Pokemon. This soft reboot gave us some really good mons too. They explored concepts of nature versus civilization, dreams, seasons, balance, and desire. You got some cool Puppos, some nice new type matchups, and mother flippin' Scraggy, the best Pokemon ever made. And sure, A lot of the Pokemon are spins off older designs. But in the ever-growing list of Pokemon, it's nice to have options, especially when it comes to all the new moves and, of course, abilities. Pokemon abilities, introduced in Gen 3, are passive powers for each Pokemon, making them a little more unique. Usually, this is a toss-up of 1 or 2 abilities. Now, they have the potential to have an alternate, hidden ability. These can't be found by normal means, usually through events, now defunct modes, and later through trading and breeding. And these can change the way Pokemon play entirely, giving life to useless moves, or making creative builds. Gen 5 was the last generation before major reworks happened, including fairy types, mega evolutions, and type attributes changing. And the jump to 3D meant they wanted to share the love across all the generations, at least in X and Y. So this soft reboot was the last opportunity to try an exclusively new cast before crossing the bridge into 3D. Oh, look at that, the metaphor's coming back. Believe it or not, this was the generation to ease up on HMs. You only had to use them about 3 times in the main story, and many of them were post-game features. Heck, even the fishing rod was endgame. TMs also had unlimited uses now, so making movesets was easier than ever. Other quality of life changes includes registering multiple items to the quick slot, combining the Pokemon Center with the Pokemon Mart, poison not hurting you outside battle, and you could see the time of day during every second of the game, so you realize how much time you've been playing, and no, it turned that feature off actually. You could not only trade Pokemon stored in your PC, but you no longer had to go to the Pokemon Center to trade or battle. You could initiate this anytime on the lower screen. This would be expanded upon in Generation 6, but for a regular DS game, this was a precursor to the 3DS's capabilities. You could see other players in your area, chat and exchange data, kind of predating Street Pass. So this is also kind of a bridge of technological capabilities for Nintendo hardware. This was all done in a customizable interface called the C-Gear. If you were a cool kid in 2011, you even got exclusive wallpapers. There's also a local co-op mode that lets you use Pass Powers, the precursor to O-Powers in Generation 6, and these let you provide temporary buffs to each other. You could also find Pokemon from the Dream World here, which of course, well this is awkward. You see, when this game was released, there's this feature to let you upload Pokemon online. They can participate in minigames that let you bring prizes and special Pokemon back to your game. This has long been shut down, and probably wasn't too great in the long run, but it was a nice fun asymmetrical approach to the game, and it was a part of a decent side quest that you can't really do anymore, so thanks to Nintendo for turning off Wi-Fi. As touched upon before, this region is a far cry from the Japanese-inspired cultures of the first 4 gens. Unova is instead based off New York. As such, they integrated the conflict of nature and civilization into the design. While there are small towns like Nuvema and Accumula to foster small communities, there is big cities like Nimbasa, full of carnivals and sports. Driftvale, the forefront of construction. Mistralton, the windy city. But then more peaceful towns like Icarus and Lucanasa. And of course, the lively Castelia City. Like New York City, Castelia is full of packed streets and busy office buildings. It was purposely overwhelming. It really makes you feel small just walking around. But stop and you could get a wonderful view of the ocean. Or make a wrong turn and perhaps find yourself in a shady alley. There's always a line to try Castelia cones. And something's always happening in the park. Every city has its own cast of interesting characters, but nothing is quite like the busy citizens of Castelia. It really made the Pokemon world seem more like just a bunch of kids running around. It had people living normal lives. There were some other big cities depending on which version you played. Opelousas City was modern utopia in black, while being a more classical village in white. Black City and White Forest grew and developed as you played, making their skyscrapers either products of industry or nature. And you could see this in the route designs as well. Perhaps the haunting Dream Yard was signs of human intervention gone wrong. Same with the unfinished train tracks on Route 3. On the flip side, the bridges of Route 6 preserved nature while letting humans pass through. The trainers you meet are explorers of the land as well, and there's lots of variety in the types of people you can meet, be it a bug-wielding clown or a rough motorcycle dude. But the interesting faces and places aren't just there to gawk at. Many side quests and objectives hide in Unova. Explore the offshoots of routes to find extra items, hidden caves, and challenging grottos. You could see something that's just out of reach maybe until next season. Or be turned away altogether because a looming threat awaits. You always had something to distract you and keep you around for just a little bit longer. Which is good because each route introduced a lot of new Pokemon. A very solid effort to add more variety in each route after some missteps from previous games. A special phenomenon can appear in the land, taking shape as shaking grass, a dust cloud, or splash in the water. These can end up being some really rare Pokemon, or the lovable but punchable Audino, to grant you a lot of bonus XP. And this added to the balance of the game, because even these distractions had a sense of forward momentum. Routes also had dynamic music. It would slow down while you're standing still or in a menu, and pick up as you're moving along. In towns, there is instrumental sections depending on if you're close to a musician. As touched upon before, the gym leaders and champion play a much bigger role this time around. While previous games had instances of them outside the world, the gym leaders of Unova are a symbol. They represent the best qualities of a leader, and often have a huge role in the city they're in, like the first gym teaching you about type matchups, which, by the way, changes based on your starter. They also happen to be world-class chefs. Then you have people like Lenora, student of ancient knowledge, Clay, an upward-facing businessman and cowboy, and Bryson, a movie star and martial artist that fights villainous teams with his own fists. Pokemon be damned. Oh, and let's talk about those villains. Team Plasma's mantra to the public and to us players is to separate people and Pokemon. They claim we're wrong for capturing and using them to fight. Or says their charismatic sage gets us. At first it plays out like other teams in Pokemon history, stealing Pokemon and some petty crimes. But every single encounter you learn more about their true intentions, the steps they're taking to rise in power, and you learn about N. A fast-talking, rude boy who can talk to Pokemon. Natural Harmonia Gropus, or N. He first appears as a bit of a rival, but quickly reveals himself as the king of Team Plasma, which isn't really much of a surprise since you see it in the cinematic opening. But it's how N treats the player character. He sees you as an equal, or perhaps something to study, or maybe one chasing the opposite virtue of him. And is constantly changing his mind when he meets new people and sees your Pokemon. As king, he wants a balanced world, one where black and white are separate. But that isn't what the real leader of Team Plasma wants. Gitsis, who groomed N from a young age, did want reform of the world, didn't want balance. He was just a bad dude. He didn't even care for the person that was essentially his son, calling him a freak without a human heart. Unlike all the other Pokemon games, the climax of the villainous storyline doesn't end between the last two gyms. Instead, N manages to beat the struggling champion Alder. Remember how I said Sharon and Alder have another person to play off them? Well, it's N. And as the new champion, he slams his castle into the Pokemon League. This is when the gym leaders come and try to fight back, while the Elite Four apparently sleep or something, I don't know. But basically, N is the first villain to actually win, and becomes the new champion or king of Unova. N challenges you to decide what he'll do as king. Before you fight, you awaken the dragon opposing N's dream, the Pokemon of Truth, Reshiram, or the Pokemon of Ideals, Zekrom. Cause mama don't raise no fools, you win, and you also save N from baddest dad of the year. The story ends with him finding both the truth and ideals he wanted. That's the very basic explanation of the story, but there's a lot more subtext here than previous games. The lore of Unova is just so fascinating, and it's told well through the game's stellar storytelling. The legends of the dragons and the brothers that control them parallels the modern situation that N and the protagonists find themselves in. And there's a lot of details from that old legend that really come to fruition in the game's sequel. Yeah, this story ends on a cliffhanger. Black 2 and White 2 would continue the story 2 years after these events. It would add and expand upon Unova in many ways, while concluding Gitsis and N's story. It's the first direct sequel in Pokemon, not really counting Gold and Silver, and it's amazing in its own right, but that's a video for a different day. Generation 5 as a whole was very divisive. There's a lot of people that look back fondly on this now, but at the time there seemed to be a lot of criticism. What a lot of people disliked is what I love about this generation. The new cast of Pokemon, the stellar sequel, its tone and pacing overall. It's one of the fastest moving games while maintaining a meaningful story, and it will always be remembered as this sort of half step. Perhaps not innovating too much on gameplay like other generations have or will, but it challenged expectations a lot. And it pushed the DS to its limits, and it made Pokemon ready to move on from its sprite-based history. It's a game that can only exist between two systems. Only exist as a half step. It's a game about bridges. The bridge between Pokemon and humans, between the players and the game. And it serves as proof. Proof that Game Freak doesn't need to rely on nostalgia to make a good Pokemon game. Proof that they can be a company that challenges the formula. Every time I play this game, I love it a little more. It's so full of charm and wit, it's my favorite Pokemon ever. And that is my unwavering emotion.